Everything about you is a lie.
It wasn't lies, Jen. It was acting.
Spurred on by the massive success of Tim Burton's 1989 Batman, the 1990s became a veritable playground of superhero movies that tried to replicate Batman's cultural impact and blockbuster status. Some came close, others failed miserably and faded into obscurity, while a select few didn't quite make the box office splash that their studios had hoped for, but later became cult classics with the advent of home releases via VHS and, less popularly, Laserdiscs.
Are these Laserdiscs?
But amongst all of this, The Rocketeer soared across movie theater screens on June 21st, 1991, and despite all that it had going for it, failed to make the impact that Disney had hoped for, recouping its production budget, but not its marketing costs, killing any possibility of a franchise. With time, however, its cult classic status soon came. But what if I told you a series of Rocketeer sequel movies and TV series had been in the works ever since the original movie came out in '91, with 2 movies receiving an official title and production crew, and a TV series actually coming to fruition in late 2019? Well, sort of. Let me explain. Based on the comic book series of the same name, created in 1982 by illustrator Dave Stevens, the movie, set in 1938 Los Angeles, follows the exploits of stunt pilot Cliff Secord, whose life is thrown into a world of war and espionage when he finds a jetpack created by Howard Hughes, which the Nazis want in their looming conquest to take over the world.
Nazis. I hate these guys.
Cliff must then don the jetpack and his signature gold helmet to become the Rocketeer, save his friends, and thwart the plans of the Nazis. However, in a strange twist of fate, all of the movie's apparent strengths ultimately became its weaknesses. The Rocketeer was unable to successfully follow Batman's success by not igniting the comic book fan base in the same way the Caped Crusader did, which in itself is not entirely surprising. Moreover, the cast and rising stars of the film could not draw in audiences the same way box office regulars could. But most importantly, Walt Disney Studios and Buena Vista Pictures lost faith in the movie early on in its filmmaking process. This in turn led to subpar merchandising, poor distribution, and mixed message marketing that lasted long after the movie had left theaters. Regardless, even before The Rocketeer failed to stick the landing at the box office, talks of a sequel were always part of the conversation surrounding the film. Originally intended to be a trilogy, with Billy Campbell signing on to do 2 more movies, and Jennifer Connelly signing on to do 1. Naturally, hopes of a larger Rocketeer universe were slashed by the film's initial underperformance. However, plans for The Rocketeer 2 were discussed, albeit briefly. Much like the first film takes elements of Dan Stevens' Rocketeer comic, so would the second film. According to Rocketeer scriptwriter Danny Bilson, a private conversation was had between Bilson's co-writer, Paul DeMeo, and Dave Stevens about how the sequel would revolve around Cliff following Jenny to New York City as she further pursued her acting career. Other than that, the script would have had to be written from the top down, as Disney was unlikely to get the rights for the Shadow, who made an appearance in Cliff's tenure in New York, and the villain of the comic run, Lothar, was already used and subsequently killed in the first movie. Aside from fan speculation, talks of a Rocketeer sequel went quiet until 2012, when it was rumored that James Wan was in talks to direct a Disney-led remake, but that project fizzled out and ultimately went nowhere. However, in July 2016, Walt Disney Pictures confirmed a sequel to the franchise was in the works, entitled The Rocketeers. The script, written by Max Winkler, son of Henry Winkler, and Matt Spicer, was reportedly set 6 years after the first film, placing it in 1944. It is known that Cliff Secord would have disappeared while fighting the Axis powers. While MIA, a new Rocketeer rises to take the mantle, with a black female pilot in the lead role. A mission would then take place to stop a corrupt scientist from procuring the rocket pack technology, and shifting the tide of the Cold War towards Soviet power. Although more is known about this Rocketeer sequel than others, the project still raises more questions than it provides answers to. For instance, who would have directed the film? Was the title an indication that Billy Campbell would have returned to the mantle as well in the movie, as he has stated in the past that he would return to the role if the story was right and paid homage to the first film? With that in mind, who would have played the lead? And lastly, would the story really have taken place in 1944 despite the actual Cold War not formally starting until 1947? Even though a lot of names were attached to the project, its concept would not fully stand the test of time. In January of 2020, it was revealed that a new draft of the film had been written, with J.D. Dillard at the helm of director. Shortly after, in 2021, the movie was not only given another new draft, but a new title and concept. The Return of the Rocketeer would have centered around a retired Tuskegee Airman coming into possession of the Rocketeer pack and taking up the helm. However, depending on where you read the leaked plot, it is unclear whether he would have discovered the pack or inherited it. It is also unclear whether Cliff Secord would have made an appearance, but it is possible that the disappearance of his character would have been incorporated in this iteration of the sequel as well. What is known though, that David Oyelowo and his wife Jessica would be producing the film under the production company Yoruba Saxon, with it being extremely likely that Oyelowo would also star in the film in the titular role. Despite the promise of its story, it was not enough to save the film from losing its director in 2022, after he had grown tired of the period aviation genre after directing Devotion. And ultimately the whole project was abandoned by Disney in 2025, with Oyelowo telling the LA Times that the changing industry landscape and shift away from diverse stories was responsible for the project's failure to launch past the development stage. Although The Rocketeers and The Return of the Rocketeer never came to fruition, the legacy of The Rocketeer did live on for the next generation through a short-lived television series on Disney Junior, where Kit Secord, the great-granddaughter of Cliff Secord, inherits the mantle on her 7th birthday. Billy Campbell does return to voice Dave Secord, Kit's father, and Cliff in archival footage, though I'm sure the Rocketeer's return in such a manner is not what most were expecting or hoping for.
What is this?
Moreover, there was a brief period in time where the hero would have made an appearance in Marvel's What If TV series, alongside Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter in World War II, but that idea was quickly vetoed by Kevin Feige over character conflicts and licensing issues, and the story was eventually rewritten to highlight Captain Carter's origin. But the thing is, the Rocketeer really never faded from the public spotlight since his release in 1982, with his comic book still in syndication in 2026. However, his live-action presence never fully rebounded from the 91 movie despite there being multiple attempts, and even in those attempts, as cool as some of them may have seemed, it remained unclear how true they would have stayed to the story we all loved. It really is hard to say. But within each of these attempts lies a passion to tell stories in the world the 91 film created. But at every turn, the story sunk instead of soared. And with that being the case, it really is screenplay or bust. Thank you so much for tuning in, folks, and please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to turn on notifications. It really helps with the channel. And comment down below, would you be interested in seeing any of these stories told on the big screen or through streaming? And given Disney's track record with legacy properties and audiences' reception to them, could they have worked? Does The Rocketeer have a place in our modern media landscape? Even if you have any lingering thoughts about The Rocketeer, make sure to comment down below, because I want to hear it. Until then, thanks again for tuning in. I'll see you all in the next video.